Let's turn now to go inside the White House. We're going to talk with Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president. She joins us now live from the White House. Kellyanne, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. We set this up a little bit at the top. Let me just hit the reset button for our viewers before I ask you the first question here. It's the subject of Michael Flynn, the National Security Advisor, reports that he may have discussed those sanctions that the Obama administration placed on Russia with the Russian ambassador before Donald Trump became president. Vice President Mike Pence denied this on January 15th. Now we have a statement from Flynn that says it is possible. He can't guarantee that he didn't have these discussions. Basic question here, does the National Security Advisor right now enjoy the full confidence of President Trump?
Yes, General Flynn does enjoy the full confidence of the president, and this is a big week for General Flynn. He's the point of contact for many of these foreign visits. If you look at the official schedule, today we had the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, here, obviously for bilateral meetings. On Wednesday, we're welcoming Benjamin Netanyahu here to the White House. And behind the scenes, they're doing a number of different meetings where they're talking about trade, they're talking about terrorism, security, the fact that Canada and the U.S. are very important neighbors to each other and will continue to be. And obviously, the National Security Advisor is a very important point person in those discussions. General Flynn has said he can't recall, and that he had about 30 phone calls with, I guess, leaders at the time, and since then 70, I'm told, with different leaders, and I'll just leave his comments at that.
But by saying that he enjoys the full confidence of the president, these two questions that are out there: one, whether he had a conversation before Donald Trump became president that involved the sanctions, and two, whether he misled or provided false information to the vice president, to Mike Pence, who then went out there and said, hey, this type of conversation never took place. By saying he enjoys the full confidence of the president, are you saying you're satisfied that he did not have those conversations, that he did not mislead the vice president?
No, those are two different questions. You asked me, and I'll repeat the answer, does he have the full confidence in the president? Yes, he does. Then you're asking me, what did he talk about with people when I wasn't on the phone? So the only way for me to answer that is to tell you what he has said, which is that he can't recall. And what he informed the vice president at the time through a conversation was that he had not. The vice president went out on TV, as you know, in January and repeated that based on the conversation he had with General Flynn. I do find it curious that, with General Flynn as our national security advisor and with the full confidence of the president right now, Steve, that we're not talking about all the things that got done over the weekend and today. We have the Prime Minister of Canada here. We had the Prime Minister of Japan over the weekend for a very extended visit here in Washington, D.C. at the White House and down at the Winter White House in Palm Beach. We have phone calls between the president and the president of the United States and the presidents of South Africa, of Tunisia, of Colombia, of Peru, of Nigeria. It's a lot of significant things happening with our commander-in-chief and our president of the United States and leaders around the globe, and obviously General Flynn is a part of all of those.
But when you say you're repeating what he has said, and what he has said, the latest statement, and we can put this up on the screen, this is the revised statement from Michael Flynn. This came out on Friday. He said that he doesn't recall, as you're saying, doesn't recall discussing sanctions with the Russian ambassador, but, quote, couldn't be 100% certain that he didn't. Are you saying that is good enough for President Trump to consider the matter settled? Because, again, you had the vice president go out there and say on national television in no uncertain terms that the two of those, the ambassador and Flynn, had not discussed the sanctions.
I think General Flynn's statement speaks for itself.
Has he discussed this with the president?
I can't reveal what he has discussed with the president.
But have they had a discussion since these revelations came out about this?
They discuss many things. So the president and his national security advisor, they routinely discuss any number of issues and concerns.
Has he had a discussion with the vice president about this?
They talked twice on Friday. It's been reported. It's been made public once in person. I happened to be around that, and then once by phone later in the day. And
is the vice president satisfied? Does he believe this was an innocent mistake on his part? How would you characterize the vice president's reaction?
The vice president's reaction, anything that's been made public, you can see for yourself. Other than that, I will not reveal what the vice president thinks or feels about anything, any more than I would reveal what Steve Kornacki thinks or feels about anything.
So do you consider it, if it is true that he had discussions. And again, the concern here in terms of federal law, the concern here is the idea of a private citizen engaging in diplomatic conversations. This is, again, before Donald Trump became president. If there were discussions involving the sanctions before Donald Trump became president, would you consider that, if that was revealed, would you consider that a fireable offense?
You're asking me to answer hypotheticals, and you're not looking at the other side, which is, what if it's not true? I haven't heard that question at all. I only hear it in the negative context. And I think we'd have to know the full, you're just asking me based on hypothetical set of non-facts. I'd have to know what the full example is, what the facts are, to be able to answer the question. And so far, I think the best evidence you have is what General Flynn has said as recently as Friday, and to look at what General Flynn has been doing with the President of the United States and the Vice President since. He's been fully involved in all these meetings. He spent the whole weekend working down in Florida, obviously involved with at the level of the president meeting with the Prime Minister Abe, and the wives meeting, and of course the National Security Advisors meeting, and the senior staffer and their counterparts from Japan meeting. And then again, he's been there, he's been present for these calls with the presidents of, I'll repeat them again because they don't get a lot of coverage, South Africa, Colombia, Tunisia, Peru, Nigeria. Just in the last couple of days, we have Prime Minister Trudeau here today. The National Security Advisor is very involved in all of that. In the bilateral meetings, we'll have Benjamin Netanyahu here on Wednesday. National Security Advisor very involved. And so I know we want to talk about this one aspect, and you're asking me to answer questions about what other people thought or did or said or believe and their confidence levels. And I can only tell you what I know and what I'm allowed to reveal, and I can only tell you what they've said in terms of characterizing somebody else's feelings.
Well, in terms of what they said then, did Flynn apologize to the vice president?
I won't reveal that. And that's a conversation between the vice president and the National Security Advisor. I know that they talked twice on Friday. They obviously were together today. I walked into the joint press conference with them, talked to them in the holding room before we were in there. But not about this, about any number of other issues that are facing this country and that they've been working on very diligently throughout the weekend through today.
The reason this has been reported, the reason this information is out there, is that apparently the intelligence community intercepted these phone calls between Flynn and the Russian ambassador, and the reporting suggests there are transcripts that are available. In the interest of clearing up all of the public questions and all the questions I'm asking you right now, do you think those transcripts should be released?
I'm not sure that there are transcripts. I think you just used the word reportedly and allegedly.
If the transcripts exist, do you think they should be released?
It depends. It depends what's on. It depends if they're a matter of national security interest. I mean, there's this idea that somehow everything the president, the vice president, national security advisor know, whomever they are, in whatever administration, should somehow be what the rest of us know. And that's just not true, and it shouldn't be true. They should always have information that we don't. But in the case of these transcripts, again, would have to know what the context was, would have to know what's in them, what they're relevant to. I mean, we're putting conundrums on top of hypotheticals, on top of conjecture here. We take it all very seriously, but I think we're having the same conversation 7 different ways respectfully, and ignoring all the other things that the National Security Advisor, President, Vice President, and this administration are doing together for the good of the people.
I want to ask you, too, about what one of your counterparts in the administration, Stephen Miller, another top advisor to the president. He made some news yesterday on the Face the Nation, one of the Sunday shows, and he was talking about the president's immigration executive order, about the court ruling, the refusal of the court to lift the temporary stay in place on the enforcement of that order. And Stephen Miller said, I think we could put this up on the screen, the end result of this is that our opponents, the media and the whole world, will soon see, as we begin to take further actions, that the powers of the president to protect our country are very substantial and will not be questioned. That phrase right there, will not be questioned, has received a lot of attention since he made that on Sunday. It's raised the question, and I'll give you a chance to answer it here. Does the White House, does this administration respect the power of the courts to review presidential decisions?
Yes, they do, and Stephen Miller does as well. What he was saying is will not be questioned. I think what he means is it's a lot of latitude, great authority, and in the case of this president, President Trump, Steve, he believes he doesn't just have the authority under the statute 1882 in the Constitution. He believes that he has the duty and the responsibility to protect our homeland and our citizens and our interests and our allies. And that's what he's doing here. We are fully confident we will prevail on the merits. And I believe what my colleague Stephen Miller is saying is that as this is either adjudicated through the courts or another executive order is issued or the high court takes it up, whatever the corrective course and whatever the remedy ends up being, that we'll have to dig into something that's not yet been dug into, because we were talking about a TRO. Here we'll be talking about the merits. We'll be talking about, does a president in fact have the type of constitutional and statutory authority that would allow him or her to exact this kind of temporary halt on travel from 7 narrowly prescribed countries, protecting those who have the LPRs, the legal permanent residents who have the green cards, and making clear why this would be in effect for a temporary amount of time, what it is the president is trying to protect, who the president is trying to protect, what he is trying to accomplish. And of course we respect the 3 branches of government. We're federalists here, and we respect the 3 branches of government. They are separate and equal. They are independent of each other. They are checks and balances to the other. So far, a lot of the coverage has been on the court and what the court has done. And there hasn't really been as much coverage as to, in my view, as to what the Constitution and the statute provides the executive in this case.
In terms of the enforcement of the order, the potential for a new executive order being issued, you just mentioned that as well. You also mentioned the idea of protecting green card holders, permanent residents who maybe were away when the issue was put down, protecting their ability to get back in the country. That was not part of the original order. Was that a mistake, not providing explicit protection for green card holders?
Well, the clarification was very important because this country we have an interest in full and faith execution of our green card program, otherwise known as illegal permanent residence. I mean, if that's your status, then you were not meant to be included in this particular executive action. That has long been clarified, and I would submit to you at the time, the numbers may be slightly different now, but basically a day or two, maybe the day or two after this originally was executed, there was as many requests and waivers that were requested were granted to those green card holders. So I'm just laying out there that there are a number of different options and where we go from here. But regardless of the option and regardless of the form that the next step takes, we will have this adjudicated on the merits. People will have to look at the statute. Court will have to look at the statute. Court will have to look at the president's constitutional authority and see just how broad it is in the interest of protecting the homeland. What the president is allowed to do under the Constitution and the statute is take necessary action as he or she deems fit to try to protect the homeland. This has always been the president's point from the very beginning, that he's going to keep it safe. This was a centerpiece of his campaign. He beat a former Secretary of State, United States Senator from New York, who was a senator on 9/11 from New York. He beat a former First Lady by having a much more clear and compelling and, frankly, muscular policy on these issues that continue to vex and concern many Americans. It's very clear. If you get past all of the hyperbole and some of the hysteria, and you actually look at what Americans think of some of the underlying policies and what they think presidents should be doing, the president's first role is to protect its people, and that's what President Trump's intention is here.
Okay. Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president. Thank you for taking a few minutes. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.
Member of the Trump White House under fire. The continued scrutiny this morning over National Security Advisor Michael Flynn for his phone conversations with a Russian ambassador. The Washington Post revealed last week, Mika, that he was actually on the phone.
Sergei Kislyak discussed U.S. sanctions against Russia in the month before Trump's inauguration. That is now proven. There are records. He lied. He lied about talking about the sanctions, and then Mike Pence lied for him.
On Christmas Day, he had sent a text to the Russian ambassador to express not only Christmas wishes, but sympathy for the loss of life in the airplane crash that took place. Those conversations that happened to occur around the time that the United States took action to expel diplomats had nothing whatsoever to do with those sanctions.
But that still leaves open the possibility that there might have been other conversations about the sanctions.
Yeah, I don't believe there were more conversations.
So Mike Pence lied because NBC learned from an administration official that Michael Flynn lied to him.
Great.
Saying that he didn't discuss sanctions with the Russian ambassador. And the New York Times reports that there are transcripts of this phone call. Rick, I don't know how you can remain national security advisor if you've lied to your vice president, you've lied to your president, you've lied to, as Stephen Miller might say, planet Earth.
And maybe violated the Logan Act, which is a private citizen negotiating with a foreign power that you have adversarial relationships with. The thing that also worries me is he would know that conversations of the Russian ambassador in Washington are conversations that people have awareness of, and there are transcripts of.
He should not have awareness of that are monitored closely.
Yes, I mean, when you go to Russia, you're told every single conversation you have as a representative of the government is being monitored. That same thing happens here as well, and he should have known that.
Look, there's the story in the New York Times, which is the big story about Flynn, which talks about generalized chaos on the National Security Council. As late in the story, after a series of kind of shocking piece of reporting, you get to the end where it asserts that Flynn doesn't really understand what's required, what you need to have congressional approval for in terms of arms transfers from the United States. So there are questions about that go to basic questions of core competence beyond these questions of whether he's been honest with his boss, honest with Mike Pence about some of these things, whether he's actually competent to do this job in terms of his situational awareness of what actually is required to be the head of the National Security Council.
So Flynn has always been a questionable choice for National Security Advisor, seemed to have some inappropriate lurchy moves over time, problems on Twitter. I said he'd be the first to go. I hope I'm right. The thing that I think is really troubling about this, equally as troubling as what we saw from Stephen Miller, is that Flynn spends a lot of time with Donald Trump. They sit together on planes. They are together all the time.
Well, and
so the
also,
influence he has on this president is very strong.
What's interesting
and
also
personal.
is the story that Flynn actually leaked out last week, talked to other people saying Donald Trump was calling him at 3 in the morning and asking him about a strong dollar. It sounds like he was mocking the president behind his back.
So you have Flynn lying to
sources.
Pence, who then promulgated that lie on television unknowingly, it seems, and now here's Stephen Miller on the Flynn situation.
Before I let you go, does the president still have confidence in his national security advisor?
That's a question that I think you should ask the president, the question you should ask Reince, the chief of staff. I'm here today as a policy advisor, and my focus is on answering the policy questions that you have. General Flynn has served his country admirably. He's a 3-star general. He's head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and I look forward to having more discussions about this in the future.
So the White House did not give you anything to say other than that
they did not give me
Flynn.
Anything to say.
You cannot. So you cannot say
Chuck,
whether or not.
Asked and answered, Chuck.
Asked and answered. Yeah.
Well, most of us, David Ignatius, on planet Earth would look at that response and say, okay, not much of a ringing endorsement for Michael Flynn there.
That's during Watergate. That was known as twisting slowly in the wind. Mike Pence has just been left out there for this weekend.
Mike Flynn
for this weekend, and he's going to have to do something. The president will have to either step up and make an announcement. Flynn will have to try to make some kind of statement about what happened in the phone calls with Kislyak. Again, I don't think Rick Stengel mentioned the Logan Act, which bars private citizens from getting involved in disputes. I don't think now this is about that. This is about being straightforward with your colleagues in the administration and with the public. The Logan Act's never been enforced in all its history. I think the issue really is why wasn't he more straightforward? And the problem that Flynn has, is that there's a record, we think, of the conversations that he had with Kislyak, and that record will be brought into this debate either by the congressional committees or by others.
And so you have two problems. You've got Michael Flynn lying to the vice president
about something really important.
About something extraordinarily important. And then the vice president actually having his reputation tarnished by going out and repeating that lie. And then you have Michael Flynn mocking the president of the United States behind his back about the president calling him at 3 in the morning, asking him about monetary policy.
Right.
That is somebody you cannot have a national security advisor that's lying to your vice president, lying to your White House, and mocking you behind your back.
Unless you have a president that's okay with that.
No,
unless you have a president that says, "Oh, he made a mistake," you know, and Kellyanne made a mistake when she broke all ethics rules and made a mockery of the White House. Oh, it's just a mistake. I'm being a dad. I mean, they break literally all the rules. They lie. They change what reality is, like the weather, and then undermine the media and undermine the judicial system. At some point, we all have to ask ourselves, what's really going on here?
Here's just at the end of this New York Times piece, and this points to two other problems. Here's literally the second to last paragraph. Several staff members said that Mr. Flynn, who was a career Army officer, was not familiar with how to call up the National Guard in an emergency for, say, a natural disaster like Hurricane Katrina or the detonation of a dirty bomb in an American city. So that's sort of an incredible thing to think that the head of the National Security Council doesn't know how to, isn't familiar with those procedures. Yeah. But also the fact that it's in this story suggests, as does all of this, the degree to which the rest of the national security team in Donald Trump's world is trying to cut this guy's throat.
They're trying to get rid of him.
The long knives are out for General Flynn.
All right, still ahead on Morning Joe, Senators Chris Coons and Angus Keene both are going to be at the table. We've got so much more to talk about that right now we're all a little dizzy. We shall return. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.
Do you feel like you and your staff there that you're in control of events at the White House?
I think to say that we're in control would be a substantial understatement. We have equal branches of government in this country. The judiciary is not supreme. There's no such thing as judicial supremacy. What the judges did, both at the 9th and at the district level, was to take power for themselves that belonged squarely in the hands of the President of the United States.
Stephen, the 3 judges say you're flat wrong.
No, the 3 judges made a broad, overreaching statement. This is an ideological disagreement between those who believe we should have borders and should have controls, and those who believe there should be no borders and no controls. This is a judicial usurpation of power. The end result of this, though, is that our opponents, the media, and the whole world will soon see, as we begin to take further actions, that the powers of the president to protect our country are very substantial and will not be questioned. And the bottom line is the president's powers in this area represent the apex of executive authority. We will have unquestioned military strength beyond anything anybody can imagine. We have a president who has done more in 3 weeks than most presidents have done in an entire administration. Saying that we stand with our ally, having the 2 men appear on camera worldwide to all of planet Earth, was a statement that will be understood very well by North Korea. I'm not going to make a comment on that. I don't have any information on it. I do want to say that Sean Spicer, as always, is 100% correct, and that what he said is true and important, and I agree with it.
So then you are making a comment on it?
I'm not going to make any new comment. It is a fact, and you will not deny it, that there are massive numbers of non-citizens in this country who are registered to vote. That is a scandal. We should stop the presses. That's the story we should be talking about, and I'm prepared to go on any show, anywhere, anytime, and repeat it and say the President of the United States is correct 100%.
That's a White House advisor, right?
Oh, my God. It's not even funny. You can't even...
Oh, my God.
It
was so much worse.
It's much
than I
worse.
Ever thought.
It's much worse.
Wow.
100% correct.
100% correct. It is a fact, and you will not deny it, a fact that was actually a lie. Right. And then again, he learned this, I guess, in autocracy for young politicals.
Okay, you told me not to say it.
Hold on a second. Hold on. When he said
what
did he say about the power?
Powers of the president are very substantial.
And they shall not be questioned.
They will not be questioned.
They will not
this guy.
be questioned. That is no. They
oh
are.
My God.
They are questioned, my young little
lad.
Miller. They will be questioned by the court. It's called judicial review. Alexander Hamilton and James Madison wrote about it in the Federalist Papers. It was enshrined in Madison's Constitution. Andrew Jackson. You go into your president's office, you know that one, and you look on the walls, and there are all these pictures of Andrew Jackson and books of Andrew. He talked about judicial independence. He talked about the importance of the judiciary. You really need to go back and read the Constitution. And seriously, the White House has got to stop embarrassing themselves by putting this guy out. You got tons of phone calls.
Worst?
I had people working me. Oh, wasn't Miller great? No, he was that is the worst performance of anybody. That made Susan Rice the Sunday after Benghazi look smooth. I mean, that was horrendous and an embarrassment. And when you have somebody saying it is a fact and you will not deny it, and then saying the president will not be questioned.
Wow.
Actually,
well, aren't we king?
If you actually read it, just to be clear about it, because it's in some ways worse, because what he says is the end result, this is the quote, the end result of this, meaning the challenge to the immigration order, though, is that our opponents, the media, and the whole world will soon see, as we begin to take further actions, that the powers of the president to protect our country are very substantial and will not be questioned, which is an assertion beyond the president not being questioned.
I told you it was creepy
of nearly unlimited
and
executive
scary.
branch authority to do whatever it wants.
Well, that is the talk of a dictator, not somebody who is president of the United States. And I would hope the president of the United States would put him in his
give him the calls you got. It seems they're taking him seriously.
Fill up his lunchbox. Put him in the corner, put him at his desk, and have him read the United States Constitution, have him read the Federalist Papers, have him read the words of our founding fathers, have him read the words of Andrew Jackson when it comes
Joe, they don't want him to. They like him.
Yet he's being
He has
rewarded
them
for this.
entire
No, he can't be rewarded
inner
for
cadre
this.
from the top down wrapped around his finger. They love him. Tell the truth.
Let me
they love this guy.
Let me just say this. You know, again, I will say it. We told everybody when it was coming that Donald Trump is going to win the Republican nomination. We said it early. Let me tell you something. This sort of talking, this sort of thinking, I'm just telling you right now. Oh, let me look at the date here. I'm just telling you right now, Monday, February 13th, 2017. If that sort of thinking were enacted into policy, we would have impeachment proceedings within the next 6 months. Donald Trump would be impeached if they did not adhere and by the way, if they didn't adhere to what the courts were saying. And by the way, the most bizarre thing about this is, and maybe he's just stupid, maybe he's just dumb, maybe he's ignorant, and maybe I shouldn't be so tough on him. Any fool in their first day of law school knows. And I knew the second I heard the Ninth Circuit had, Ninth Circuit, they're gonna overturn this, or they'll put a stay on it, and then it'll get to the Supreme Court, and they'll turn it around. They've got the Supreme Court. They're going to get their 5th vote. They're going to fill up hundreds of judicial vacancies over the next couple of years. So he is picking a fight and sounding like an autocrat.
And they love that.
When he doesn't have to. They are creating. Right here, they are creating something, so he can go out and say that. What are they testing? Are they testing us to see if we're going to sit back like sheep and say nothing?
It'll make Judge.
Wait, I want to read.
It'll make Judge Gorsuch
time.
have to denounce him also during the confirmation hearing, because he will be asked about the independence again, and these comments will be put front and center.
Let's split this really quickly, David Ignatius. The president does have substantial powers when it comes to the borders, and when it comes also to securing this country. I've written about it. I wrote that the Ninth Circuit decision was wrong. I believe it was wrongly decided. That said, we have these debates. But when they say, David, that the president has substantial power and it will not be questioned, it will not be questioned. Please, tell me, what goes through your mind when you hear that?
It sounds like another country, not the United States. The way in which judges have been singled out, one of the things that Stephen Miller said was talking about the unelected judges thinking they can run things. Donald Trump's own comment about the so-called judge, referring to a judge in Washington who made the initial district court ruling. these are deeply offensive to our system, and I should note they're deeply offensive to judges. Judges do not like being singled out in this way and having their authority challenged. The issue here is judicial review. It is central to our system of government. You were absolutely right in that Stephen Miller doesn't seem to get that, but we're a long way, I think, from courts and their role being overturned. Trump has said, maybe I'll have to go back and draft a new order for the district court, go back to the district court because I've lost in the appellate court. He's seeing I think, the reality of his choices. But what Stephen Miller said should worry everyone because it's a challenge to the way our government works.
And it absolutely should worry everyone because from the top down, they loved his performance.
They praised it.
They thought it was good.
What is so unbelievable is, Harold, is the president had a good weekend with the Japanese prime minister, a good call with China, and
a good thing happening today with the with Justin Trudeau and Ivanka and the women's economic platform being pushed.
Pushing.
That's good.
A
finally,
women's economic platform. That's
Very
great.
good.
But all they had to do this morning was quietly issue a new executive order,
right?
And would have put this behind. Why did they put him out? Why did they push him? Why did they have him say undemocratic things? Why did they have him say things that would do violence to the United States Constitution when they didn't have to? Why do they keep doing things like this? At first, you want to say, oh, this is and then you start going, wait a second. Are they seeing how far they can push? Every Republican in Washington, D.C., if you do not speak out about that, then you were doing yourself a disservice. Never call yourself a constitutionalist again. Never call yourself a constitutionalist again. Just call yourself an obsequious, pathetic little lemming. You just had somebody say the president will do whatever the hell he wants to do. We're not going to listen to the courts, and we're not going to listen to Congress.
Can you imagine if they'd put Rex Tillerson and or John Kelly out, or both of them, to begin to preview what may happen this week around the order, and for Tillerson to be able to comment with regard to North Korea and the kinds of things we're going to do to respond? It would have, to your point earlier, no tweeting by this president. I thought he had a pretty good weekend, optically a great weekend. With the Prime Minister. Yeah. We'll see what happens. Somebody have to think it will lead in that direction. But to put Stephen Miller out, it begins to show, or it reinforces, there's some strange tensions still there in that White House that need to be worked out.
There's some anti-democratic tendencies in that White House.
I'm trying to be kind of diplomatic.
There's some anti-democratic, anti-constitutional forces in that White House. This is very clear.
And for your message to Republicans, it's a threat. It's going to get worse.
And by the way,
you deal with it now, or you're in big trouble.
Getting texted by some of the most powerful Republicans who were absolutely shocked. I can't even repeat what they're calling Stephen Miller.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
I'll show you when we go to break.
We're back in just a moment. We're back in just a moment.
No, he cannot. You know, he and Michael Flynn have stepped on a great weekend. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.
Let's get to our top story. The UN Security Council is expected to convene later today at the request of the United States, Japan, and South Korea to discuss North Korea's weekend test of a ballistic missile. Multiple nations are discussing the possibility of new sanctions against Pyongyang. North Korea called the launch a success, and their state television released this video, which it says is of the test. State media claims leader Kim Jong-un supervised the launch personally, and that the missile tested is a new type of weapon. The missile traveled around 300 miles, then crashed into the Sea of Japan. U.S. Strategic Command believes it was either a medium or a long-range missile, not an intercontinental ballistic missile, and poses no threat to the continental United States. The test was the first since President Trump took office and came during the visit with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The two leaders addressed the launch late Saturday night, with Abe calling the launch absolutely intolerable and Trump saying the U.S. stands behind Japan 100%. Joining us live from Seoul, South Korea, NBC News foreign correspondent Keir Simmons. Keir, South Korea says this was a, quote, show of force to the new Trump administration.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way it's viewed in this region. In a sense, I guess you could call this a classic piece of North Korean attention-seeking. They've done it many times before, and keep in mind that, in a sense, North Korea have been starved of attention by the Obama administration for many years. They see a new president as an opportunity to maybe change things, perhaps reset things. So there are two sides to this, I guess. One is the military side. It is the case that they have been able to develop these missiles over time. So in that sense, I guess the Obama policy hasn't worked. It is also the case at the same time that a lot of this is about politics. As you mentioned, the timing is absolutely crucial. What's interesting is to see the Russians and the Chinese criticize it. The question, though, is how the White House will deal with this going forward, because the real fear, of course, is that at some point North Korea develop a long-range missile that is nuclear capable and capable, therefore, of reaching the U.S. mainland.
All right,
Keir Simmons, thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Let's go to David Ignatius right now. David, I guess timing is everything. You look at the fact, and actually some positive timing, where the president seemed to mend fences with China at the end of last week. They had a very good call, according to everybody involved in those talks. Then this weekend, we saw something that we haven't seen in quite some time, a president actually spending an entire weekend palling around, golfing with the Prime Minister of Japan. Two very critical diplomatic outreaches at a critical time with North Korea.
I think you can say that the Trump administration really did put its Asia policy on a sound footing in the last week. The meeting with Abe is the most important sign to both North Korea and China that this really most important U.S. alliance in Northeast Asia is strong. Abe took a big risk in coming and kind of jumping into the arms of this president in his first weeks in office, and the Japanese view this as a real success. What was striking about the reaction to the North Korean missile test is something that the White House, Trump's entourage, has been thinking about since the day of the election. What are we going to do when the North Koreans test? The reaction was surprisingly restrained. The president had a 23-word statement. He really left to Abe the hard statement. This is absolutely intolerable.
And you know, David, there were some people that were actually critical of that. I've been harshly critical of many things the president's done over the past 3 weeks. I thought that was pitch perfect. Let them speak and say, we are here and we stand behind you, period.
And, Joe, we should remember that our Secretary of Defense, Jim Mattis, has just been in South Korea and Japan talking about the hard side of U.S. power. I think American power is always more convincing when you say less about it, but it's there. So there are plans going forward with Japan and South Korea for much expanded cooperation in terms of missile defense, in terms of systems for monitoring what the North Koreans are doing. That's where real power, real pushback is going to come. And I think Trump was wise not to shoot out a tweet, but to be restrained.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching. Let's go. We're going to play the Stephen Miller
It's worth
collection.
looking at again. It's riveting in a really frightening way.
I asked my Republican brothers and sisters to look at this very closely and begin to understand how dangerous this
and also understand the White House is behind this 100%.
Do you feel like you and your staff there that you're in control of events at the White House?
I think to say that we're in control would be a substantial understatement. We have equal branches of government in this country. The judiciary is not supreme. There's no such thing as judicial supremacy. What the judges did, both at the 9th and at the district level, was to take power for themselves that belonged squarely in the hands of the President of the United States.
Stephen, the 3 judges say you're flat wrong.
No, the 3 judges made a broad, overreaching statement. This is an ideological disagreement between those who believe we should have borders and should have controls, and those who believe there should be no borders and no controls. This is a judicial usurpation of power. The end result of this, though, is that our opponents, the media, And the whole world will soon see, as we begin to take further actions, that the powers of the president to protect our country are very substantial and will not be questioned. And the bottom line is the president's powers in this area represent the apex of executive authority. We will have unquestioned military strength beyond anything anybody can imagine. We have a president who has done more in 3 weeks than most presidents have done in an entire administration. Saying that we stand with our ally, having the two men appear on camera worldwide to all of planet Earth, was a statement that will be understood very well by North Korea. I'm not going to make a comment on that. I don't have any information on it. I do want to say that Sean Spicer, as always, is 100% correct, and that what he said is true and important, and I agree with it.
So then you are making a comment on it?
I'm not going to make any new comment. It is a fact, and you will not deny it, that there are massive numbers of non-citizens in this country who are registered to vote. That is a scandal. We should stop the presses. That's the story we should be talking about, and I'm prepared to go on any show, anywhere, anytime, and repeat it and say the President of the United States is correct 100%.
This guy's holy. It is a fact, and you will not deny it. And the power of the president, the powers of the president are very substantial and will not be questioned. And will not be questioned. Our opponents, the media, the whole world will soon see, as we begin to take further actions, that the power of the president to protect our country are very substantial and will not be questioned. That sounds like a spokesman for Vladimir Putin. Sounds like a spokesman out of Turkey.
Circa 19.
There is. So, by the way, so Stephen Miller, let's take you to class for a second here, because I know you didn't go to law school. I don't know what type of school you went to, but they certainly didn't teach you civics. Certainly didn't teach you the United States Constitution, certainly didn't teach you separation of powers, certainly didn't teach you the Federalist Papers, but you walk into that office, so that guy on the wall that you see a lot of pictures of, and his name's Andrew Jackson, 7th President of the United States. Your president is a big fan of Andrew Jackson, so you can obviously read, because I saw you reading cue cards or something while you were talking there.
Yeah,
I'm not sure, or maybe you were just nervous and your eyes were darting.
Somebody was holding a sign with
But this is Andrew Jackson, your president's hero. All the rights secured to the citizens under the Constitution are worth nothing and a mere bubble except guaranteed to them by an independent judiciary. Andrew Jackson, July 5th, 1822. You come out and say the president will not be questioned? You're unworthy to be in the White House. You're unworthy to be in government if that's what you believe, unless it's Vladimir Putin's government. I'm just saying, the White House has to walk this line back.
Well, they tweeted, the president himself tweeted, Joe, that he did a great job. So maybe you ought to address that as well.
I can only hope that the president of the United States
was too busy playing golf.
Did not know, too busy working with the Japanese Prime Minister. David Ignatius, I want again, this is just a moment we need to stop. You had the spokesman to the White House yesterday go out on all the shows and say the power of the president will not be questioned. And then, making matters far more concerning, the President of the United States tweeted his congratulations for that performance, and staff members called all of us, working us, telling us what a great job Stephen Miller did yesterday, when he basically sounded like a little autocrat on TV.
Fortunately, federal judges do not take orders from Stephen Miller. And the judges who are reviewing this case, the district court judge who began it in Washington and this Ninth Circuit panel, are trying to construct quite narrow rulings. What they said to the White House was, you have enormous powers, Commander-in-Chief, over issues of national security, over issues of who gets across our borders, but you have to present evidence of a threat that justifies what you're trying to do. That was essentially the core of the appellate court ruling. And when Stephen Miller says this is ideological, this is about those who want borders and those who don't, that's the really outrageous part. All that the courts are saying is, under our system, you have to show why you want this.
And the most outrageous part of it, John Heilm, is the fact that this will ultimately be resolved in their favor. Right. They are going to have a majority on the Supreme Court with Judge Gorsuch. They are going to fill 125, 150 federal judgeships. They could have quietly done an executive order this morning without him saying that yesterday and gotten everything that they wanted to get.
See, I think the thing that's troubling about it is that I don't think it's just limited, although in this case, if you read the plain language that he used, he's talking about the judiciary. One generally gets a sense over the last few weeks that there is a kind of pervasive view in the White House, which is we will not be questioned. And there is they direct that toward the press, they direct that toward their political opponents, they direct that towards some within the party and towards the judiciary. The reality is that yes, you will be questioned. You'll be questioned by everybody. That's what the gig is here, right?
But they're undermining the truth. They're undermining the media.
It's the job of various institutional restraints on the president, the Congress, the courts, the press, the citizens, to question, challenge the president, and try to hem the president's authority in various ways. The president will push back, but the notion that there's just that they have a sort of an impulse towards, you will not question us. We will do what we wish, and you will sit in the corner and be quiet is not going to work.
And it's more than that.
You know, Rick, and we have warned on this show time and time again, don't trash the intel community. They will cut you into 1,000 pieces. They will. Well, Donald Trump's learning that now. And Michael Flynn's learning that now. They're not listening to common sense. And this leads nowhere. This sort of thinking leads to calamitous defeat for the Republican Party in 2018. FDR tried a court packing scheme.
Right.
And it was the only time his presidency was in trouble. Donald Trump's low point in the campaign was when he questioned Judge Curiel. You can't do that. If you want to criticize movie stars, if you want to criticize the public, if you want to criticize the press, fine, go at it. But you do this, then you start talking about our Constitution, and you start questioning the checks and balances that have protected this country from tyrants for 240 years.
And I think, Joe, what they're setting themselves up for is a presidency where you have a conflict between the Article II branch, the executive, and the Article III branch, the judiciary, like the Nixon administration. They're setting the template for that right now.
And what happened to Nixon?
Well, I think they don't, and that kind of autocratic, authoritarian language doesn't play well with the American people. No president is above the law. And they actually have some institutional prerogatives based on what Congress has given them in terms of immigration that the courts actually could ratify. But then to put their finger on the scale like this is just not a...
Early retirement, I think, is the word you're looking for.
Nixon had early retirement, and again, this is yet another fight that was so unnecessary. Again, redraft the executive order this morning, put it out, and you'd get most of everything that you wanted. And again, you're going to control the Supreme Court. You're going to control the federal courts ideologically. He wants to talk about ideology. They're going to control it ideologically. Why? You pick a fight with the judiciary and say, we will not be questioned on something that is so temporary. It leads me to believe that they are actually looking for a fight. They are testing. They are pushing the boundaries. They are seeing what Americans will put up with. And what they won't put up, and they want to see if they can, at least Stephen Miller wants to see if they can trample judicial independence.
Look, you get the sense, there's no doubt, broad groups within the media were wrong about the outcome of this election. There seems to be an enduring and residual anger on the part of those in this administration, still at the media. To say the media and the entire world.
By the way, they're sore winners. Thanks so much for watching.